Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for being patient this afternoon. We were spending some time together with these families behind me and sharing their stories, but also sharing about what this office will do, the work that it will do in bringing grieving families together, but also the advocacy that it can facilitate for them going forward and helping prevent future tragedies like theirs, but also bringing together folks for real solutions and policy, not just at the federal level, but also for state and local level as well. It was a powerful time together, and it did go longer than expected, but for me, I'll be forever changed by the stories these families told, the details they told me, but also the advice and wisdom that they've given from years of suffering and grief, but also knowing that loss in your life changes everything forever. Listening to them speak, you recognize the reality of what grief is, that when you lose someone that is this important to you in your life, that forever the rest of your life is determined by that day. That everything that you reference from that is, though that was before they were taken from us, or that happened after the day we lost Jocelyn, or that happened before Drew was killed in an overdose. And that is what these families' lives were forever changed by what happened to them and what gives them the strength to stand up here now and continue to tell their stories. I truly believe that one of the greatest honors of getting to be the Secretary of the Department of Homeland Security is getting to interact with Americans like these families that don't believe that they have special gifts or talents or think that they have something incredible within them that makes them want to stand up in front of people and share their stories. It's that they have incredible strength because of what happened to them, and because they found that strength within them to tell their stories and their testimony, that they literally saved America. I believe that by them telling these stories, they woke up the American public to make a change in leadership in this country, that now we have consequences for people who break the law. Now there is enforcement of our laws, that people know that it matters when you do right, and there are going to be severe consequences when you do wrong. These families behind us stood up and told about their grief and their suffering, what their children went through, what their siblings went through, and because they did that, American families rallied around them, and they put a president in the White House that now is willing to take tough actions to take our country back and put it back on a foundation for which our founders envisioned when they gave us freedom and liberty and the ability to live in a country that truly is special and safe. So thank you for being here, and thank you to all of the folks behind me for sharing your stories. When I took the oath as the Secretary of Homeland Security, I pledged that I would work to protect the American people from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And let me be clear, we have enemies living among us. Because of what the Biden administration has done by opening our borders, they have allowed terrorists, people that are on the terrorist watch list, dangerous criminals, gang members, and criminals to enter our country and to perpetuate violence on American families. And that is going to stop now. The book of Proverbs tells us that it is for us to stand up and to speak for those who can't speak for themselves today. And there are a lot of statistics in the world, but Greg was sharing earlier today about the fact that just since 2019, we have 1 million parents that have grieved and lost their children just because of fentanyl, and the loss that this country is suffering because of drug overdoses and trafficking is taking out the next generation of Americans. So it's up for us, and it's our responsibility every day to speak for them because they can no longer speak for themselves. I'm standing here today with angel families who lost their loved ones, and as I listened to them, I was changed, not only by what they said, but by watching their faces and the emotion that hit them. Today we have many that told their stories. Alexis, you're familiar with, as she lost her daughter Jocelyn, but also Jackie spoke very powerfully about the fact that, we fear that people will forget those that we love. I think one of the greatest fears of losing people is that people will forget them and that forget what they were like. She talked about how Jocelyn was a happy girl and funny and gifted and talented, and we should remember those traits, not just how we lost her. We also have others here, Sabina, Tammy and her husband Jeremiah, who talked about being unfiltered, which I think it's probably time for us to be a little unfiltered when we talk about the reality of these tragedies. Ann and Doris, Doug and Patricia, Greg, Amanda, who, if you remember Amanda telling her story about being attacked in San Francisco, having her skull fractured and still feeling like she didn't go through the suffering that other families did, but her life was changed forever by that illegal alien that didn't face any consequences for being in this country and perpetuating crimes. Agnes, Maureen's husband, Michael, I believe, had to leave already, but I just want to thank all of them for being here. I'm going to tell a little bit of their stories before we give them the chance to speak and talk about what the Voices office will do for them and their families and others in this country. Tammy's daughter, Kayla, was just 20 years old when she was strangled to death by an illegal alien in 2022. She was in her bed sleeping after working the night shift when her killer broke in and attacked her. Kayla's killer was a member of MS-13, and he came into this country illegally from El Salvador and was able to get in due to the open borders of the Biden administration. He was a known gang member, and he was sentenced to 70 years in prison for Kayla's murder. But he was allowed, even though he had that criminal record in El Salvador, in this country. Ann Ferdner's son, Weston, was just 15 years old. He played football and hockey. He loved to surf, and his life was cut short when he was poisoned by fentanyl in 2022. I think you all remember the powerful speech that she gave at the convention last year that really changed a lot of our hearts. The spread of these legal drugs is one of the most devastating impacts of the open border policies and actions that the Department of Homeland Security is using every department and agency to go to war with. Doug and Patricia's son, Nicholas, was a veteran of the United States Marine Corps. He was driving with his friends to Rocky Point, Sonora in October of 2024 when the Sinaloa cartel members, they ambushed him. They chased him down and shot him in the back while he was trying to escape. And he was just 31 years old and was serving in our military. Now the Sinaloa cartel is one of the cartels that President Trump has targeted and has designated as a foreign terrorist organization. And that is going to bring all of the departments, agencies, and the military to bear to fight these organizations as the terrorists and the enemies of the United States that they are. Now, on what would have been Nick's birthday is the day that the Trump administration announced new sanctions against the Sinaloa cartel criminals as well. We all have been and are familiar with the story of Jocelyn, Alexis's daughter, but it's a story that can't be told enough because of the tragedy of it. She was just 12 years old when two members of the Venezuelan gang, the Tren de Aragua, kidnapped her, they raped her, and they murdered her. And even though they were much bigger and much older than her, Jocelyn still fought her attackers as much as she could. And she was brave till the very end, and a very tough girl. Also here with us today are leaders and representatives of many of the groups that fight every single day to support these families, but also fight human trafficking and help us go after illegal activities. I'd like to ask them to stand when I mention their names and have them be recognized for the work and the advocacy that they do. Marcel, you're the president of the National Center on Sexual Exploitation. If you would please stand, thank you for your service and your help. Kelly Dorr, director of the National Human Trafficking Survivor Coalition, is here as well. Rochelle Kenyon, CEO and attorney at Collective Liberty, thank you for your work, especially in the courtroom and all the legal advice that you give. Samantha, strategy advisor of the Shared Hope Institute for Justice. I don't know where Samantha is, but we'll catch up with her. Chris Lim, director of research and policy at the Institute for Survivor Care, and also Stacy, the president of Stop Child Predators. Thank you, Stacy, for being here today, and thank you all for your work. These organizations and their representatives here work tirelessly to end this despicable crime. And while the Biden administration may have been the worst offender when it comes to open borders, they were certainly not the first ones. We're still dealing with the consequences of previous administrations. And just last week, we lost another American to illegal immigrant crime. Nate Baker, a 21-year-old student at the University of South Carolina, was killed when an illegal alien ran him over with his truck. This illegal alien, who was driving without a license, he fled the scene and he left Nate to die. Thankfully, the suspect was arrested by the brave men and women of the Columbia Police Department, but it turns out that after he entered the country illegally, he was caught and released by the Obama administration. You know, I was just in El Salvador, and I spent some time touring the CCOT prison where the worst of the worst are being held. And to see that there was real consequences for these individuals that are members of gangs and terrorist organizations is a reality of what I think every single person needs to recognize will happen to them if they perpetuate crimes affiliated with these terrorists. It's the prison where we have sent many members of the TDA terrorist organization. We have already deported over 800 members of the Tren de Aragua gang since President Trump just returned to office. It was TDA members and their associates who murdered just 12-year-old Jocelyn Nungary and nursing student Laken Riley last year. And we're getting these dirtbags off of our street, and we're making them pay consequences for what they've done to our country. But we know that these two girls are not alone, and that there's many families and countless others who have paid the consequences for their violence. Cartels are setting up networks to bring in ingredients for fentanyl into Mexico from China. They're participating with Chinese businesses and PRC affiliates, smuggling it in, laundering money, and bringing it into this country. America is in a new war with China over this issue, and cartel terrorists have been helping them fight it. And terrorists have been helping them, and we are going to fight back with every tool that we have. Just last week, CBP seized 34 pounds of fentanyl in California, and on that same day in Nogales, Arizona, CBP seized 73 pounds of fentanyl, 121 pounds of meth, and 9 pounds of cocaine in a single arrest. In fact, our Coast Guard just made a historic interdiction mission with over $500 million worth of cocaine that they seized. President Donald J. Trump will make sure and will continue to fight for each of these families. And it's why we're here today announcing the reopening of the ICE's Victim of Immigration Crime Engagement, or the VOICE office. The VOICE office began during the first Trump administration, and it was a resource for those victims of crime. And those crimes are related to immigration and illegal immigration as it impacts this country. The Biden administration shuttered this office. And to look at the history of it, there was no reason to do so other than a complete disregard for the tragedy that these families have had to live with. They shut down the only resource that these families had to have a victim's voice be heard and their families to be listened to. Biden prioritized and protected foreign criminals and undermined our national sovereignty and violated our laws, and then closed an office that serviced the victims that were impacted by it. President Trump is righting the ship, and he's reopening this office, and he's going to prioritize not only these families, but all the families that will be impacted by illegal immigration and the tragedy of losing someone because of the consequences of it. The VOICE office will be here to make sure that these victims and their stories will be heard, but it will be heard to wake people up and allow them to continue to impact policy and the direction that this country is going in influencing its leaders to protect our communities. The VOICE office has 3 different objectives. The first is it uses a victim-centered approach to provide support for crime victims and their families. Second, it will promote greater awareness for services that are available to victims of migrant crime. And third, it builds strong partnerships with community stakeholders, assisting the victims of immigrant crime as well. And as we observe National Crime Victims' Rights Week, DHS remains more dedicated than ever to the mission of protecting American homeland, our citizens, and our way of life. Law and order are back, and we are going to continue letting cops do their job, enforce our laws, and bring consequences to those who break our laws. We're going to help our victims, wrap our arms around them and love them, help them heal while remembering those that they've lost. And we're going to continue to make America safe again. ICE's VOICE office will speak for these that we have lost, and it will be a critical part of all the efforts that we undertake in doing so. So thank you, and may God bless all of you. May God bless these families behind us, and we are so incredibly grateful for their strength and what they have been able to do. Thank you for your strength in telling your stories, and thank you for being an advocate for taking America back and putting it back on its foundation.